10! Ali shouted, his voice muffled, yet somehow reverberating in the spacious living room as he stood facing a corner near the plush mahogany sofa, his bony hands covering his eyes. Giggling and whispering, the rest of us dashed away from him, scrambling to find places to hide in. Following 2 other kids, I bolted up the granite stairs that wound their way up smooth marble landing lit up by dull orange rays of the late evening sun that spilled in through the arched skylight. Eyes darting side to side, I wonder where I should go next. An idea solidified in my brain, making me grin. 9! The other 2 went right, and I went left, bolting down the narrow and dimly lit hallway lined by doors on either side, some shut, some left ajar, and others veiled by embroidered curtains. I ignored them all, and I knew where I wanted to go. 8! I spotted the door at the end of the hallway, halfway open with its hinges resting on the strong wall that separated the inside from the outside. Skidding to a halt right outside it, I quickly shot a glance behind me, soothing my irrational fear of being followed by Ali, and then ducked into his bedroom, where some of us had spent hours playing video games. 7! The room was dark, with the only source of illumination being the weak lights of the hallway that crept in with great hesitation, pushing back the darkness by a couple of feet or so. That was fine with me, as it would make it only harder for Ali to find me. I blinked, my pupils dilating and my vision slowly adjusting to the dark. The darkness was overwhelming, and I could barely make out the silhouette of a wooden chair next to a desk, with presumably a computer perched on top of it. With effort that was Herculean for an 11-year-old kid, I dragged the chair and pushed it against the wall next to the television. 6! I stepped on the chair, using it as a leverage to pull myself up on top of the concrete ledge above the TV, and curled up into a ball to avoid knocking off the pots and framed pictures decorating the elevated space. Sweat dripping down my brow and my heart thunking against my chest, I waited for bated breath for the hunt to begin. Soon enough, he was going to saunter through the hallways, yelling out, "I spy," at our friends, his youthful and slightly rustic accent making the words sound like ice spice. He was going to be so terrified when he finds me, that is, if he manages to find me at all. 5! His voice was faint, distant, and barely audible. I had to strain my ears to actually listen to him. I was concentrating so hard on him that I completely missed the stench that slowly spread across the room, until it stung my nostrils like pepper. It reeked something bad, like roadkill, or dead rats rotting in the crawl space beneath the floorboards. I scrunched my nose at the invasive smell, wondering what in the world was stinking so bad when I heard this rapid, raspy, and rhythmic sound somewhere close to me. It took me a moment to understand what it was that I was hearing, but my heart skipped a beat when I finally did. In, out, in, out. Someone else was breathing in this room. 4! My body froze in terror. Who else was in here with me? Did some other kid choose to hide here? Impossible. I would have surely noticed them running into the room. What then? There shouldn't be anyone else in the house. Ali's parents and sister were all supposed to be out. Maybe it was a cat or something. Please be a cat. Please be a cat. Something fell on the floor with a resounding crash, making me jump in fear. It was a pot placed close to my feet, shattering on impact as it kissed the floor, splattering it with mud and cracked clay. I didn't touch it. Then who did? The answer came to me as warm, wet air on my toes. Whoever was in here with me was breathing on the soles of my feet. I yelled and pulled my legs up, hugging them close to my chest. The action tilted my head, making me look at the space where my feet had been, I spotted a dark shape, blacker than the darkness shouldering the room. It was too long, too big, almost spilling over the ledge as it started stalking me. I clenched my eyes shut, but not before I saw glowing little orbs glaring back at me. 3! Shutting my eyes only made it worse, as it heightened my other senses. I heard a raspy, rhythmic breathing, clear and louder than before, such that it drowned out all other sounds, leaving the rattling of its lungs the only thing vibrating my eardrums. I felt it exhale on my feet again as it pulled itself closer to me, goosebumps springing up wherever the warm air caressed my skin, making me shudder and whimper. I wanted to scream. Why didn't I scream? It was almost as if I couldn't. 2! Ali's voice cut through the fearful fog surrounding me, dissipating the terror, if only for a fleeting moment, but then the horror coalesced, denser and more oppressive than before. Relief had just begun to drip into my heart like water from a leaky roof, and I had only started considering opening my eyes when I felt a hand on my leg, cold and rough, with such freakish strength. The muscles on my legs constricted. The patch of warmth on my skin moved upwards, from my skin to my hips to my spine, increasing in intensity as the labored breathing became more frantic, more excited. Then another hand on my other leg, its grip just as vice-like in strength. I was immobile, and not just from the fear. If that wasn't enough, long, flowing hair brushed against my skin, tickling the pores in my skin created by the fear-induced goosebumps. Tears hung from my eyelids, and I began crying, the sobs barely above a whisper. 1! More flesh came into contact with mine, too much, too heavy, as if half a dozen people had been compressed into a single entity. Hands, other than the ones holding me down, began caressing my arms, fondling my ears, touching my hair, my lips. The stale and hot air was now on my face, flowing down from the corners of my ear to my nostril, the nauseating stench bringing fresh water into my eyes, even as the matted locks of hair lingering on my neck, raising my hackles up. Then Ali shouted, "Are you ready? I'm coming!" But the words didn't just come from Ali. Whatever was lying on top of me screamed them into my ears, the voice shrill, yet guttural at the same time. The contradiction snapped me out of the daze I was in. With a sudden burst of energy, I broke free of this thing's grasp, tumbling and falling down on the floor. Pain exploded in my left foot. I didn't know it at the time, but the awkward and sudden fall had broken multiple bones in there. The pain helped me further clear the fear from my brain, finally allowing me to scream, and I screamed, and screamed till someone burst into the room, flipping the light switch on. I wish I could say that I didn't see anything, but for a short second there, I did, and the image is burnt into my memory, haunting my nightmares to this day. It was a man with long hair falling down his face, creating a black, shimmering veil that his glowing eyes broke through. Those bloodshot eyes, with crimson veins stretching across the eyeballs, as if stopping them from popping out, glared into my own, even as the dozens of limbs spouting out of his frame writhed and contorted maddeningly. His mouth dropped open into a perfect circle. He held my gaze for a moment that seemed to stretch for an eternity, and then he was gone, disappearing with a flash as the room was blasted with light. The injury immediately ended the party and our friendship. Naturally, no one wanted to be friends with someone who sees demons in their friend's bedroom, then injures themselves and goes on to get psychiatric treatment. A big no in Indian society. The incident left a big mark on my soul and made me question my sanity for a long time. However, in my long struggle with that trauma, I did have an odd source of comfort, letting me know that what happened was real. Ali's family, who had lived in that house for decades, moved out 3 months after that incident.